This episode of UK Low Carb Podcast is sponsored by Deliciously Guilt Free. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to UK Low Carb. I'm your host Dan Grief, and today and for the next few weeks we're doing something pretty special. Graham Phillips and I have recorded some different episodes about topics we think you want to hear more about. Now, if you don't know who Graham Phillips is, he's best known for being the pharmacist who gave up drugs, and this is because he realised throughout the whole of his pharmacist career that the drug treatments he was giving were mostly plastering over the patient's ill health rather than curing them. He went back to the research and he discovered that lifestyle was often the root cause of most of their health issues. So every Tuesday, Graham and I will discuss topics such as calories, lipids, fat versus carbs, blue zones, aging, sleep, and a whole range of topics. Later in the series, we'll also hold a live event where you can ask any questions you have for Graham. So as you go along, take a note of anything that comes up, and then you get your chance to ask him live. Now, Graham is also a member of the UK Low Carb Facebook group, so feel free to join in the conversation there after today's episode, where he'll be very happy, I'm sure, to engage in a bit of conversation and Q&A. I hope you enjoy these, and any points, any thoughts you might have, go to UK Low Carb, where I'd love to carry on the conversation. I'm now going to hand over to the great man himself, Graham Phillips. Hello everyone and welcome back to UK Low Carb. This is the penultimate recording I'm making with Graham about our series on topics we think you need to hear more about. Welcome Graham to UK Low Carb.
Hi Dan, how are you?
Very well, thank you. I've been working on my sleep, so thank you for your advice last time. And today we've got a very interesting topic, which is aging and age, which in some ways you think this would be a non-controversial topic. It just happens. Age is just something that happens, but actually it's far more complicated than that, isn't it, Graham? And I'm going to start off with a very simple question for you, which is, what is aging?
Oh crumbs. A very simple question that requires several PhDs to answer.
Well, you got about half an hour. Go for it.
Exactly. So let me try and anchor this in a couple of interesting facts. I think most of us think about aging as an inevitable process, and it's going to happen. Ultimately, we're going to die, and what we try and we've got a sense of what a good death would look like, which doesn't involve, being in a residential home with dementia, dribbling into our soup.
Yeah.
A couple of things. If I asked you, what do you think is the oldest age that a man's ever fathered a child?
Well, it's older than a woman can have a baby, so I don't know, 70s or so.
I think there are examples of men fathering children in their mid-90s.
Oh my word! Wow.
And what's the oldest a woman's ever naturally mothered a child, given birth to a child?
Well, I guess it's pre-menopause, so 50s or something.
Yeah, I think mid-50s.
Right.
Very rare. So the combined age is 140-ish, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Does the baby come out old or brand new?
Oh, it's a brand new little baby.
Right. So that might seem an abstruse and irrelevant point, but the point is, somewhere beside us is the blueprint for youth.
Oh, I never thought of that before. Yeah, you're right.
Well, old parents have a young baby.
Yeah.
So somewhere inside us is whatever the genetic code is for a perfect brand new life.
Well, this is a bit mind-blowing. Yeah, that's so, yeah, of course.
Okay. Let me throw a couple of other ideas at you. I can't remember, I know you're going to ask me the name, but I've forgotten. There's a tree that's 5,000 years old and shows no sign of aging.
Wow, where's that?
I think it's in Africa, but I'd have to look it up. Perhaps we'll find it for the show notes. Yeah. There's also a whale that's 500 years old and again shows no sign of aging.
Wow.
Now, genetically, whales are pretty close to humans, aren't they? Because they're mammals. There are many, many similarities. So Okay, so you're telling me there's a mammal that's lived to 500 years and there's no sign of aging. So let's start putting this together. It would appear to show that aging is not an inevitable process. Because if a tree can live to 5,000 years, that, it shows that life can go on without limit in a sense. And if a whale can live to 500 years, what could a human being live to? I mean, who knows? Now, and there are very, very lots of similarities here. If you go back, 20, 30 years ago, if someone had cancer, it was just regarded as an inevitable death sentence. You would die, and it's a question of how long you'd live and how awful the death would be.
Yeah.
And the only available option was palliation, right? And I'm sure you're far more expert about this from what you've learned from Basma than what I know, but no one believes that anymore.
Yeah.
And most people with cancer now outlive the cancer. They're going to die of something, but more than 50% of people survive the cancer to the extent that they die of something else.
A bit like HIV and AIDS. I mean, in the 80s, there's very much the idea that's the life sentence and it's going to be the end of you. Whereas now, a lot of people can live and die of something else with the disease or the HIV and not actually get the disease or die from it.
So how am I trying to link these together? And it's like this. The people who... So most of us think, okay, and this is how conventional medicine works, is, well, if we can eliminate the diabetes, cancer and dementia, everything will be great. But actually, one of the people I follow is Valter Lungo, and I would certainly recommend his book on aging, and he's fantastic on YouTube, Professor Valter Lungo. He says that will give you about 3 additional years of life.
Wow, 3 years.
3 years. If you eliminated all these diseases, you don't live forever, you live for about 3 longer years.
Wow.
And the whole basis of prolongevity isn't live without illness for a few years longer, it's live healthy for longer. And I'm talking 10, 15, 20 years longer.
Yeah.
So it's looking through the lens of aging through the other end of the telescope. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mix those many metaphors on your show, but hey, I've just...
You just have, don't worry.
I apologise for that, but you know where I'm coming from.
Let's go cliche central.
So by the same token in which we no longer regard cancer as an inevitable process, people who study gerontology don't regard aging as an inevitable process. They're saying it should be treated as a disease, and they're trying to get it reclassified as a disease rather than just what's going to happen, there's nothing you can do about it.
And what I find interesting in all science, you have to start off with asking the right question to get the right answer. So like you just said in oncology, if they hadn't have thought in this way, maybe they would have just tolerated death by cancer as an inevitable. But you're saying if this specialism, do you say gerontologist, is that right? Studies aging. If they're questioning it in this way, this is very interesting because, okay, so just come back to my original question about what is aging. Now, this is my layperson's understanding. I've always imagined that the cell replicates itself, and every time the cell replicates itself, it doesn't make a perfect copy, but rather there's a slight sort of deviation. These deviations over time are where basically like a photocopy again and again and again and again and again, you have problems and they just get perpetuated and it gets worse and worse and worse until in the end, eventually the body will then cease functioning. And at a basic level, is that correct?
And that's called Horvath's clock.
Right. Okay.
And there's a brilliant YouTube by Horvath, TED Talk, and he describes his clock. And the clock of aging is exactly what you're saying. So every single cell in the body has got the same genetic content, right? How does one cell know that it's got to be a hair cell, and another cell know it's going to be a skin cell, and another cell is going to be a brain cell, when they're genetically the same? And this has all got to do with the rapidly unfolding a fascinating area of epigenetics.
Right.
And at the center of your cells, you've got all the genetic code, and it's folded up, and it's coiled a bit like a garden hose.
Oh, okay.
And it's held in a particular shape so the genetic material is going to link together and folded, and where it's linked, if you like, where it's sort of tied together, it's by methylation. So it's a process of sort of hanging the whole thing in a particular shape.
Right.
What's at the centre of your garden hose you can't see, right? The only bit of the garden hose that's expressed to your view are the outer few layers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same is true of our genetic makeup. So how your genetic material is folded and what's exposed to the external environment is what determines how your genes are expressed in that cell.
Wow, this is
Going back to where I started, which is all cells have got the same genetic material.
Right.
And you're quite right. So your next bit was absolutely spot on. As you keep replicating cells, damage is done and you're correcting the damage.
Right.
And you're probably too young to remember this, these things called CDs that you used to put on the...
I know CDs very well, yeah.
Right? And if your CD's got a few light scratches on it, it'll still play fine, right? If the scratch is a bit deeper, you can kind of polish it off and it'll still play.
Yeah.
If you get your CD and really rough it against the wall,
it's gone.
It's irretrievably damaged. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And that's the point at which if enough of your cells get to that point, because serial damage has been done over time, either as a result of the process of replication or the process of your life, in other words, the fuel you put in, sleep, all those other things that we've talked about, you reach a point where the control systems that do the repair become overwhelmed by the damage,
right,
and they can no longer put it right.
Wow, okay.
You rewind that a bit and say, okay, what was the thing that caused the scratches on my CDs? Well, I'm not going to leave them out anymore in the atmosphere with the sun, UV light, with the dust scratching all piled up one on top of each other, so that when I take one out of the middle, I've scratched it, right? You think of all the things that you do to a CD to maintain. If you put it away each time and dust it and keep it in a nice cool place, pretty much got an unlimited life expectancy.
So what is it that's doing the damage to us then? What is it that's doing the damage to the cell to make this replication a problem?
So cellular processes are high energy processes, right?
Okay.
And depending on where you are in the body, you have more higher energy processes than less. And I think we talked previously about the optic cells in the eye that sense light. And they are the cells that are doing the most intense high energy processing.
Right.
If you've got a diet that's full of sugar, then you have these processes called glycation. And glycation is where sugar is added to protein.
Right.
And glycated proteins are damaged.
Right. Okay. So that's a damaging factor as a sugar.
So you can talk about diabetes in a number of different ways, but one of the ways to describe diabetes is accelerated aging.
Right. Wow.
So when we talk about, there are kind of two ways to measure age broadly, right? There's the day from which you were born, but there's also your sort of physiological state.
Yeah.
And you can see two 80-year-olds, one of whom is, you can see that they've got no life left in them. They've got multiple illnesses. They look like hell. They're not having a life. They're alive, but they're not having a life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can find another 80-year-old who's vibrant, fit, healthy, full of life, still able to have sex, a complete life.
Yeah.
They could be both born on the same day in theory. So what you really want to understand isn't someone's chronological age, which is not irrelevant, but it's less relevant, as to what's their physiological age.
Yeah.
What are the processes that drive physiological aging? Can we understand them, prevent them, or reverse them? And just like type 2 diabetes, which still many people think it's an inevitable process that will only ever get worse, require more medication, and will accelerate your death by 20 years. You and I wouldn't agree with that, right?
No, exactly. Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen it firsthand. It's
right.
not the case.
The processes of diabetes and all the associated aspects of metabolic syndrome are all accelerated aging processes. So all the things that we are talking about and we have been discussing, a good diet, the right type of exercise, plenty of sleep, dealing with stress, all of those things aren't just a benefit in terms of reducing your risk of cancer, dementia, type 2 diabetes, etc., but can be extended into healthy aging.
Right.
If you understand the processes, the cellular processes that underlie the accelerated aging, and the ways that the body can reverse those. Now, we've talked previously about your classic Ferrari, haven't we?
Oh yeah, the
I
wrong
pointed
fuel
out
and how
to
I
you that,
destroyed it.
yeah, right. I pointed out that not putting the right engine oil in wasn't particularly clever, and when you filled it with diesel, that was the end of it. Right? It didn't end well.
Why didn't you tell me sooner?
Yeah. And that's why halfway up the high street it failed, even though on the outside it looked beautiful because you'd only polished it the day before.
Yeah, yeah.
So once you understand that, I mean, no one would do that, right? And that's a very obvious, slightly silly example.
Yeah.
But it's not that far away from a human body.
Yeah.
If you fuel your human body on the wrong fuel, it'll get you from A to B, but it'll struggle.
And the wear and tear would be far more severe.
Wear and tear will be far more. So our typical, I think in the US, 60+% of calories come from ultra processed food. Mm-hmm. And I think we're at 57%.
But the interesting thing there is, Graham, is that people might say, yeah, but we're surely living longer now than we were 100 years ago or so. Is that true? And if so, what would be the reason for that?
Yeah. So 100 years ago, overwhelming causes of death were death in childbirth, mm-hmm. death of childbirth,
right,
death in wars, and death by malnutrition.
So the stats would blow that out because a lot of younger people are dying rather than people living to a shorter lifespan when they did survive those things. And
I've said to you before, we could link back to that episode. So if a woman has 2 children, one of them dies in childbirth and the other one lives to 80, the average life expectancy is 40, right?
40, yeah, of course.
Doesn't deny the 80-year-old. And if you go back 100 years, a 20-year-old had pretty much the same life expectancy as a 20-year-old today.
Right.
And all that modern medicine does is it adds 2.3 years of not very high quality life to that.
Or guarantees you get to 20. So if you get to 20, then you're okay. But really after that, it's no much difference at all.
So yes, we are living longer, but not maybe on average, there's no doubt we are living longer. Life expectancy is doubled. But behind that is a whole lot more of interesting information that we don't really talk about enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So we did a program on seed oils, and I'm not going to recap all of that, but I would certainly say avoid the seed oils, and particularly the hidden ones. So everyone knows about the seed oils in the takeaway. It's all the seed oils hidden in your sauces and in your organic this and your organic that. Avoid the seed oils because they will poison your mitochondria. So if you want to damage your cells at the most fundamental level, eat the standard Western diet, McDonald's and Pizza Hut and Doritos.
Yeah, and that'll attack your cell there. And what else can we do? What if you're living like a low carb keto type lifestyle anyway? So you might have, that doesn't mean necessarily you're not eating seed oils. Many people do, but if you're avoiding most of those things, your diet is fairly low carb. Yeah. What's the next best thing?
So we've just done a recording on sleep, mm-hmm. and along the way, several times we've talked about stress. All those things play a significant role. Mm-hmm. And we've also talked about exercise. Mm-hmm. So let's go back to our cellular processes and our folded genetic material and our methylation, and think about how that works and what we can do about it. So first of all, if you don't create all that stress within your cellular processes, you've got less of a problem of all that genetic material being repeatedly damaged as we go. So just like I explained with the CD getting damaged ultimately beyond repair, mm-hmm. that's one thing. The next is to think about how you can switch on the mechanisms that counteract aging. So just like we've talked about the computer doing a defrag and all of those things, the body's got a number of programs which prevent and reverse the aging process. But if you overwhelm that program, it reaches a point where it's not going to work.
Right.
So let's talk about hormesis. So these are forms of positive stress. And those forms of positive stress are the stressors that switch on your sirtuin genes. And your sirtuin genes are the genes that run all these age-preventing processes.
Wow. Okay.
The first, as you well know, is extended fasts.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of debate about, we should be clear about fasting. Fasting is not eating for at least 24 hours and probably not eating for 36.
Right.
Anything less than that isn't fasting, it's time restricted eating.
Oh, okay.
But when people talk about, like, as I said to this previously, I give up smoking between cigarettes.
Yeah.
Right?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Right? Same principle. So it's got to be a period of at least 24 hours without food.
Okay.
And probably 36. And there's a sweet spot. It's probably very individual. Between 3 and 5 days is the sweet spot of fasting that it produces this hormesis effect, which switches on your sirtuin genes.
Right.
And then, so that is one way of doing it. The second one is what the Norwegians do, which is to get into a very hot sauna and then get into an ice cold plunge pool.
Which is what I did last night. So I decided, because now the saunas have opened up at my gym, I was like, right, there's a cooler sauna and there's a really hot one. Don't even waste my time on the cooler one. Go straight to the hottest I can find. Did about 5-6 minutes because I'm not so used to it like I used to be. I used to do 10, 12 minutes. Sometimes that's 15. And I did about, so a few minutes. And then I came out and then I did deep breathing, went into the plunge pool. Absolutely loved it. I've got used to the plunge pool over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I don't lose my breath like I used to. I really breathe through it. And I stay there until my hands and my feet are really painful and nipping. And then I get out, but my core and everything feels fine. And then you get out, you feel like you're just like a god. It's incredible the feeling you get out of that plunge pool.
Try and extend your period in the hot to up to 20 minutes.
Okay.
Because it seems to be the maximum benefit is somewhere between 20 and 30.
Right. Okay. I'll do that then.
Yeah. So same thing. You don't need to go beyond 30, but somewhere between 20 and 30. So I tried to aim for 22 minutes or something like that. But so that's the second one, hormesis. So it's positive stress, or what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one is high intensity exercise.
Right.
And we've done one on exercise. So it's that exercise that is so strenuous you couldn't hold a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually that can be short then, can't it? Because like 20 minutes of that, you couldn't do more than that, can you?
No, you can't do that unless you're superhuman.
Yeah.
The sort of exercise I'm talking about is you could maintain it for maybe 5 minutes as a maximum.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I do my park run, I'm so pleased because park run's restarting. I belt my last kilometre.
Yeah.
And my last half kilometre is absolutely at maximum.
Right.
The point where when I reach the end, I feel like I'm going to die.
Yeah, yeah.
And your body then says, "Oh, you just dodged the Bluetooth tiger, the saber-toothed tiger. You just dodged it, but only just, mate. So we're going to do some positive stuff. We're going to build more muscle. We're going to increase the number of mitochondria. We're going to do all these positive things." So those combination of those three things are, together with the healthy diet, the one thing that we've never been adapted to is poor sleep. So I'd refer everyone back to our last episode on sleep, because all the good that you're doing, if you then sleep badly, forget it. You're building your house on sand.
Yeah, yeah. So the balanced lifestyle has nothing to do with diet being balanced at all, but really it's to do with these stressors, the proper relaxation, the proper nutrition. That's the balance in life, isn't it?
We've got to the point in our lives now where there's no discomfort. I can sit on my bum 24/7 and Alexa will bring me anything.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we're avoiding anything that takes us out of our comfort zone. As a result, the body never has to make that adaptation. So it's just like any other form of muscle. If you don't use your arm muscles, they get weak.
Yeah.
If you don't use your brain, you never use it. You never use it or lose it.
Yeah, yeah.
I've nicked this old thing from Disney. I hate hormesis to pieces.
Very nice.
Right. But actually, you've got to be prepared to go through. It's only short-term discomfort, but no one wants any discomfort in their lives. Our cars get more and more comfortable. Our houses get more and more. Everything's getting more and more comfortable, right? But that's not where we're designed to be. So there are those three forms of positive stress. And then there are some supplements as well, which appear to be helpful and appear to have an evidence base. Again, these are several PhDs, but one of them is resveratrol.
Right.
And that's why I recommend to my clients red wine, particularly the red wines that are highest in resveratrol.
You say Sardinia? Is that
Yeah.
where it comes from?
So,
Yeah.
the easiest, most easily available one is Malbec.
That's my favourite. Brilliant.
Right. But if you can get hold of, and you can get hold of it, Sardinia in Canna now.
Okay.
You just Google Sardinia. It's not cheap, but then it's a health food, and it's an
so
investment in your health. And they've got the highest amounts of resveratrol in, also lots of polyphenols, which supports your microbiome.
right.
And then there's a whole debate going on about nicotinamide riboside against NAD. I'm not going to go into that because that's another PhD's worth. But NR, nicotinamide riboside, appears to support the mitochondria and has a direct effect to benefit cellular aging. So much as I'm not one who sells lots of expensive supplements and doesn't take lots of supplements, I do take supplements of both of those things. They're not cheap, but I regard that as, if I can have another 10 or 15 years of vital, healthy life, bring it on. So I see it as an investment.
And I'm going to be in the plunge pool and the sauna and doing all that stuff, which to me is a big part of the gym as well. Actually, I love that.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. What do you think then, with all those things in place, would be a natural lifespan for a human? With a very healthy approach to all those things.
So two of the people I follow and who are my absolute heroes, one is Peter Attia, and he does 4-hour podcasts on the most abstruse subjects at the most technical. I mean, I have to, I kind of feel I have to listen to this stuff and distill it for my clients.
Right.
And he and David Sinclair have just been made chairman. Someone set up this massive fund of billions and billions of dollars to support aging, and you can imagine a whole massive industry around aging.
Oh yeah.
You move away from processed food and big pharma and want to live healthy for longer. So those are two people to follow, and they are visionary. Now, David Sinclair's done some amazing experiments, and one of them, I've learned lots from him, and he's very available on YouTube. A very accessible scientist, and his book is absolutely brilliant. So we might link to Peter's written his book. Well, Peter's a perfectionist, right? So he's been writing this book for years, and he's never happy with it. So he always has to improve it before he can release it.
Nice.
And I'm kind of wondering, at some point you've got to let go.
Yeah.
David's also a perfectionist, but David has finished his book. So we'll link that to that book in the program notes. So David does lots of experimental stuff, and lots of these experiments are done in mice, and he's been able to show that if you damage the optic nerve of a mouse, it becomes permanently blind.
Right.
And the eye is a very interesting, because it's kind of separate from the rest of the body. It's a good experimental.
I've heard this. It's a separate unit that doesn't get healed by the body or anything, is it?
It's really quite independent.
Yeah.
What he's been shown is that by a combination of different antibiotics and supplements, he can reverse the blindness of the mice.
Whoa.
And he's not that far away from clinical trials in human beings. Now, just imagine if we could, I'm not saying it would cure all blindness, but if you could cure or reverse 50% of blindness, how profound would that be for mankind?
Amazing.
And if you can then extrapolate that into other areas of life. So he's talking about, you reach a certain age, or you reach a certain biological age rather than a physical age. You take a certain combination of supplements and some antibiotics. You switch on your sirtuins, and it reverses your aging by 10 years.
Wow.
So you're not 40, you're now 30.
That'd be amazing.
And he's talking about within our lifetimes, a reasonable, realistic life expectancy of 150 years. I'm talking about 150 years of high quality, vital, healthy life.
Wow. Wow. So that is potentially possible within our lifetime. That could happen.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's incredible. So you heard it here first then, guys. If you want to sign up for that, then you're doing probably the right things already with regards to the food intake you have. But there's other things as well, which I think actually, listen back to all the episodes, because there's a lot of things there that I think relate to things we've spoken about before. But for sure, I don't want to be that older person who has an unhealthy life. You don't want to just exist to 80, 90. You want to live fully to those ages and have a great life to those ages.
I just concluding remark really, Dan, which is when we set up the Prolongevity program, the premise of Prolongevity isn't avoid illness. The premise is to live healthy for longer.
Yeah.
And so this is why I like to have a long 6 to 12 month relationship with my clients, because we get them away from the risks of cardiometabolic health. That's only the first stage in the process. Stage 2 is healthy life extension. I think that's much more profound.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Graham, thank you for that. And details of our live will be out very soon. But I just want to say a big thank you, not just for this episode, but for all the episodes we've recorded together. It's been a real blast. And over the months we've been doing this, I've really learned so much. I've got a notebook here full of stuff based on what I've learned from you. So
can I just point out, during this process, I've got 10 years older, but you've got 10 years younger.
Yeah, exactly. And also, more importantly than all of that, I now have a stand-up desk out of the process as well, which I'm not actually using today, but I have absolutely loved. So that's been really beneficial. But yeah, thank you so much for everything. It's been really good talking to you over this period. And all those people listening, please get your questions ready for our live. Details to follow very soon. But for now, thank you so much, Graham.
No, thanks for the opportunity. It's been a blast.
Great. Good man. Right. Cheers, Ed. See you at the live.